a church, a mosque, a synagogue. We are living in the material world, and that's the reality of it. That we are here, we human beings, we not the elevated souls. We achieving, we trying, we aspiring to reach that path of where we are totally free from materialism. But right now, the reality is that we are all plagued with raising children or being within the ambience of women, children who definitely need protection. And this topic, therefore, I'm saying to you, is something that we need to take seriously. We are seated here. It is our collective and social responsibility, each and every one of us, whether we are men or women, to actually mobilize against abuse. Now, I know that some people may say, well, this is a love feast. Srila Prabhupada's love feast, yes? And Srila Prabhupada was vocal against abuse. He was vocal about the protection of women and children within ISKCON. And if we are seated here, or if we are watching online, it is our collective responsibility to have a voice, to say, well, we are followers of ISKCON. We are children of Srila Prabhupada, disciples, aspiring disciples, entering the parampara. So what would Srila Prabhupada want? Would he want to discuss this topic in 2022? Yes. Would you agree with me? Yes. It is a topic that we need to speak about. And therefore, I am actually very, very humbled to have experts with me this morning to share advice, to share details, experiences. Her Grace Karunamai Devi Dasi, if you could come forward. Karunamai, I will introduce them as we chat. We're going to have a conversation around this, and we're going to invite you to also, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts around this, to share with us also. And we have Her Grace Manjwali Dasi to join us also. Mataji, thank you so much. And we have a social activist from Pietermaritzburg, Sandra Naika, if you could come forward also to join us. And Sandra will be talking to us more about what's happening on the ground. So we are going to have a real discussion, and always keeping in mind what Srila Prabhupada had said, what he would like, and the Vedic scripture referencing that. So I'm just going to take a seat, and yes, my name is Krishangi Radhe. So, and I head up the Vaishnavi ministry for South Africa, which is Vaishnavis are women. So it is an important segment of our wing of ISKCON. Karunamai Devi Dasi, she heads up the Child Protection Unit or Child Protection Office for ISKCON South Africa. And Manjwali Dasi, she's an attorney by profession, and she's going to be taking us through the legal aspects in terms of how we can get help from the judiciary or the courts of South Africa if we find ourselves in the situation. But not only with women, I think it's important to understand what the legality around this is, because we all have thoughts around the South African criminal justice system, but I'm going to ask those questions as to really what are the steps that we can do. And I always say this in terms of when we speak about gender-based violence or when we speak about child protection, it may not happen to me, but I'm not saying that my children would be free from it in future generations. So having this understanding and having this knowledge is important for us to share, whether it's our neighbor, our aunt, our relative, our sister, our mother. And I think Sandra is going to be talking about elder abuse later on. So all those things are important. We never can say what will happen tomorrow. So thank you so much. I just wanted to frame it and put it in context. I'm going to chat to Karunamai first. Just going to be able to move my so I can see you and I can actually talk to you. There is another mic available. I think Anandath Prabhu, I could use that mic and perhaps send this one around. Okay, Her Grace Karunamai also serves on the Vaishnavi ministry for many, many years. And thank you. She's got 2 young daughters herself. And this topic is something very close to her, just like me, with 2 young children of my own. But also professionally, she's a medical doctor and she's a specialist pediatrician. She's one of 2 oncologists, I think. 3 now. Every time I chat to her, I ask that question. One of 3 pediatric oncologists. And she works at the Grace Hospital in Pietermaritzburg. When I was talking to her, she said to me, she had cooked Ekadashi Prasad already. This morning, she was in Pietermaritzburg on call by 7 a.m. She did her rounds there, and she's back here. What an amazing Vaishnavi. So thank you, Karunamai.
She's not supposed to say that.
Well, just giving some background. So thank you for all that you do. And tell me, in terms of the ISKCON Child Protection Office, what is that about?
Okay, so the Child Protection Office for ISKCON is actually in existence since 1993. And the reason that it came about is because I'm sure many of you...
Sorry, Karuna, just, bring it closer.
Okay. So I'm sure many of you are aware there's a lot of child protection cases that have come to the fore more recently. But the office is in existence since 1993. So each country is meant to have a child protection office, which is what I serve under as the director for South Africa, just recently appointed. And each temple has child protection officers. So Radha Radhanath has 2 child protection officers. Currently it's Mother Radhika Sundri, and the other one is Tungavidya Machaji. So those are the 2 child protection officers that we have at this temple, and each temple has 2 of them. So they serve as the point of reference for any complaints or concerns that you have in your temple. And then they will bring it up to us at the central office, and then we will deal with them accordingly.
Okay, so I know from my experience also with the Child Protection Office, we have established this many years ago, right, especially in South Africa. And tell me, as a pediatrician and as heading up the Child Protection Office for South Africa for ISKCON, what is child abuse?
Okay, so maybe I should start with a medical definition. So the World Health Organization basically describes child abuse as either a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring with any relationship to deal with children, right? And this occurs when there's a breach of trust, where there's an expectation of trust, and this results in harm. So child abuse takes many forms. What people are more familiar with is the child abuse where there's violence against children, either corporal punishment or repeated beating, right? But what others are not, so that's one form that you're aware of, and then others are aware of the sexual abuse against children, right? But there's other forms of child abuse. And the other forms include bullying of a child, either by an adult or another child, neglect of children, and then I've mentioned the assault, and then the other one is exploiting children for one's own gain, child labor. So yes, so those are the different types of child abuse that we have.
Manjwani, can you pass that mic through to Karuna if that's okay? We're just getting our tech stuff sorted out so you could all hear nice and clearly. Thank you so much. Yeah. So that's the medical definition, as you said. But on the ground, and this is so interesting for me because I'm a teacher myself, right? And we see this in the classroom where you mentioned something like bullying. And bullying is so subtle that you don't know, like if my child comes home, or even if I see it with my learners, it's how does it affect them in terms of they don't come home with scars or physically beaten that you can say, yes, that child has been abused. But what does bullying do?
The act of bullying on the person who is being bullied does result in emotional trauma to the child. So some of the signs that one would look for in a child who is being bullied at school would be a child who's reluctant to go to school. Now, we all have some of those kids who just like to stay at home. I'm not talking about a child who's trying to avoid going to school because they want to play at home. I'm talking about a child who ends up faking an abdominal cramp or being ill or being emotionally withdrawn from the family. Sitting in, locked up in a room, not wanting to interact with other family members. And these are kids that are previously interactive. So a child who suddenly becomes withdrawn, socially withdrawn, is emotional, and they may have emotional outbursts which is not in keeping with the expected. So those are kids who may be experiencing bullying. And these days you can't ask a child, I mean, if I have to ask my daughter, how was your day at school? It was okay, mom.
Yeah.
So we have
Standard response.
Standard response. So it's not, how was your day? You have to ask open-ended questions. Can you tell me what you did in school today?
What was the favorite part of your day? What did you enjoy the least? You kind of like to prod them on to say,
them
talk
to
more.
Speak. Exactly. Yeah. So you have to get them to speak. So sometimes in doing these prodding, you'll be surprised at what comes out. Yeah. Even with Karaneshwari, she had an incident in school, and she didn't immediately open up to us, but she opened up to her aunt.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes they may not want to tell you as the mother. They may have a closer relationship with another family member, and they may feel more comfortable speaking about this. So it's important to engage the other family members who are close to them to also gauge for signs of abuse.
So that I could add on to that perhaps and say that trusted adult that we always speak about. And I could tell you, thank you. I could tell you also that being in the classroom on a daily basis, and if there's teachers here, seated here, I can see one or two teachers within this room, that the children of today are nasty. You know, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush. But I always reference from when I was growing up, and I'd always have this discussion at home when I hear stories or when I see what happens in the classroom. And I always come back and think, but you know what? I never experienced this. It's so sad to see that our little children have to really toughen up to be in the world today.
So if I can just give you some examples of bullying. For Karaneshwari, it was one of the kids when they were changing in the change room after PE, and one of the girls told her, your legs look a bit funny. Now, for most people, that may seem like something so simple, and what does it do to you? But, I guess it depends on how you bring up a child as well. There's two aspects. When we were younger, people were nicer.
Yeah.
And as we see Kali Yuga is progressing,
absolutely,
things are changing. So when we were growing up, we didn't have all of these things. It wasn't as bad. But now, like girls against girls, it's like, oh, your hair is too straight, or you have a funny shaped nose, or why do you speak with your mouth in a slur? Why do you stutter? You are too fat. I mean, these days, body dysmorphic disorder in children is on the rise. The number of kids that, and I'm talking about kids as young as 10 years old, that have anxiety disorder, have depression, And this is all in part bullying at school, but also the amount of stresses that we put on children
Absolutely.
and expectation.
And so tell me if you suspect now, like as we chatted now, children may not be open to come home and say, Mommy, this is what happened, right? If you suspect, if you see that they've pulled away or they're not themselves, one of those red flags that you just highlighted, what would you do? What would you recommend?
So I think the first thing is when you see this is to try and get them to speak up. And it's easier said than done.
Right.
I mean, anyone who has children, it's harder to get them to open up. But try to find a way in which you can broach the subject with them. If that fails, then speaking to the teachers at school to find out, has there been any issues with child abuse that they have noticed, or any bullying? So engaging with the teachers. Sometimes the teachers may not be aware. So the next port of call would be friends or other students that you know of. And you could do that by reaching out to parents on the same group platform.
Yeah.
Or if you know the children, obviously with parents' permission, to ask them and engage in conversation in that way.
And on a more, this, I'm not saying this is not serious, but when it comes to just say physical abuse of a child, what would you do, and where would you seek help?
So for physical abuse,
Okay, let me take it a step back. Physical abuse. How would you define physical abuse?
Okay, so physical abuse would be any undue harm that is caused to children. Now, the physical abuse can have various forms. That could be somebody just pinching a child repetitively, corporal punishment. In the old days, some of us may have been brought up with a snap on the knuckle with the ruler is okay.
Spare the rod and spoil the child.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. But that's actually child abuse. And whatever your view may be on that, we all have strong views on how to discipline our children. But anything that is causing physical harm to a child has lasting effect.
Yeah.
And I mean, signs of physical abuse, it's easier to see. A child who comes to school who's wearing a long sleeve shirt when it's a hot day and refuses to take it off, who comes in with little bruises repeatedly. And usually children who are undergoing physical abuse also face neglect. So you'll find these kids with unkempt hair, unwashed oily hair,
Right.
maybe lice, etc., dirty clothes, not ironed. So all these other subtle forms would point to that.
And where to seek help? Where? I mean, if you're a parent or, or somebody seated here and you say, but I see this child that I know something's wrong, what to do? What can we do?
So it depends on the environment. If you're seeing it in a school, the first point of call is reporting it to the educators. Educators are trained on child abuse as well. And what they do is they have to report it to the social work department as well as the police department. And then thereafter, these bodies conduct an investigation and then either decide if they're going to remove the child from the family depending on the severity, or just keep them in a place of safety for a while. But there are these bodies available. But your first port, if it's a school environment, would be an educator. If we see it in a temple environment, like since we now discussing
In
the
this
congregation, this temple, you would report it to one of our our CPT reps. So my mother Radhika Sundri or Taralakshi Mataji. If you are unable to get a hold of them, you are welcome to contact the temple presidents. We do training regularly with all the leaders of South Africa on how to deal with child protection issues. So they are trained how to deal with that. If you feel you are not getting any joy, you're welcome to contact me directly and we can direct you to the appropriate people for where you can get help.
And I think that's so important because, as I said earlier, thank you, Karunamai, because We feel that we don't know who to turn to, or perhaps we also don't know, is this abuse? So just seeking, asking questions, finding out, rather not turn a blind eye. Oftentimes our gut, our instinct is there, and we say, but we're doubtful, we're not sure. But in these matters, rather pursue it. And if it's not so, well and good. But if it is, then you've helped the child so much. So thank you. We're going to chat about the woman now.
So Krishangi Radhe is the chair of the ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry for South Africa. She also has done a lot of courses. She's a neuro-linguistic practitioner.
Yes, correct.
And basically part of her training, she's also an educator, she's a mom, and part of her training is that she has to do a lot of psychology courses. So maybe I can start with you. Woman abuse, what does it entail? Because it's a broad umbrella.
Very broad. And, you know, for women, I think it's also sensitive because we say, where do we begin? It's a broad umbrella. But what really struck me, and I think I've been speaking about this through many, many interviews, many writing pieces and so on. When the pandemic hit and when we were on lockdown, one of the things I think, remember those family meetings, which is also another family meeting is imminent soon. But with those initial family meetings, the president had said, well, what we are finding is that there's a silent pandemic that's going on within our community, and that is gender-based violence. So when we were locked down with our spouse or within our family unit, not going to work, not going to social gatherings, not doing our day-to-day activity, what happened is that there was a lot of abuse within the home. And frustrations came about and so on. So stats actually say, and I pulled out these stats from 14th of June, Daily Maverick 2022, which is current stats for South Africa, says that worldwide 27% of women and girls aged 15 and over, and I've got a daughter who just turned 15, so 15 and over, experienced either physical or sexual violence. But in South Africa, the figure is staggering. Over 1/3 or even up to 50% of teenagers and women aged 15 and above have experienced gender-based violence, have been abused in some way.
So those are staggering figures. So if we have to contextualize it, 1 in 2. So either the person next to me or next to you, and skip 1, and basically 1 in 2.
1 in 2 women over, and this, so I said I love stats so that it makes it real, you know. And when I pulled this out and I went back and I said, how long ago was this? But it's actually from 14th of June 2022. So it is scary to think that we are sitting here and it could be anybody. The problem is, and I'm going to say this openly, is that we are afraid to speak. That is the problem. That you asked about, it comes, this gender-based violence comes in so many ways that whether it's physical, whether it's sexual, it's emotional even. Their Lordship Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So it comes in so many different ways and forms that sometimes it is subtle that we don't know. And it could be femicide also is on the rise. We see it often in the newspaper. We see it often on social media. And we think, who's next? So, yeah.
So can I ask you, so you've mentioned femicide and you've mentioned gender-based violence, right? So I'm assuming you're referring mainly to the physical abuse. What other types of violence against women is prevalent in society today?
So when we look at psychologically or emotional abuse, that is something that, as you said with children, it's post-traumatic stress disorder eventually, or PTSD, where it carries with you forever. So, for instance, it could be in the form of a spouse, when we talk about domestic abuse, who's very controlling, who wants to know where you're going every minute of the day, who doesn't allow you social circles, who doesn't allow you to perhaps work and earn your own money. So become very reliant on your spouse or your partner. It's those simple things that we take for granted. No, you know what? He's possessive. He doesn't want me to work. Or he's old school to think that I shouldn't do this. But eventually it becomes so controlling that this person dominates you and you lose your own sense of identity. You begin self-doubting yourself, you become an introvert, and you then afraid to tell somebody because they will look at you and say, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong. So that's that form of emotional or psychological abuse. Physical abuse, of course, we've spoken about. Just like children, we have scars. We see it. But it is also said that the scars disappear, but the emotions run so deep. And that's when we have generational trauma. So it's passed on to generations. Because you haven't healed from the emotions that you've experienced through this, that as a mom or as a caregiver or as whatever, it's passed on unconsciously, subconsciously. It's passed on to the next generation.
I just want to ask you another question. So in ISKCON, if we look at the Vedic perspective and women as Vaishnavis and the proper Vedic wife, how does one tie in or draw the line between a husband expectation for you to be a Vedic wife and abuse? So basically I'm asking you, what's Srila Prabhupada's view on what a Vedic wife should be?
You know, that's such an interesting question because we often talk about the modern woman. Because as I said initially, we are in 2022 and we can't shy away from, Karunamai, you went to work this morning and came here now, right? So we can't shy away from our responsibilities and how things have evolved. But we always go back to what Srila Prabhupada said. The ideal home is having Krishna in the center. That is what Srila Prabhupada said. The ideal home is having Krishna in the center, and husband and wife should be supporting each other in the best way to develop a perfect Krishna conscious abode. So having that support from each other, Srila Prabhupada never said that it's the wife should just be subservient. The wife should be that ideal wife who would maintain the culture of the home in terms of Krishna consciousness. The husband should protect his wife and children. And in that way, when everything works in synergy and in sync with Krishna in the center, then where's room for abuse? If there's that mutual respect, they would never be. And the basis of the Vedic philosophy, Bhagavad Gita says, that we are the soul within the body. So what to speak then about you're a woman, you weaker than a man? You know, and there was that one interview where the journalist was asking Srila Prabhupada, you know, about men and women and who's stronger. And Srila Prabhupada said they're different. It's, you know, a woman is able to give birth to a child. Can a man do that? So Srila Prabhupada was very straightforward. He said it's not a matter of who's stronger and who's weaker. They are different physically. And so if we have that mutual respect, understanding that we are the soul within the body, understanding that Krishna is residing in all our hearts. So imagine, why would a husband want to take his hand and hit a woman when he knows that Krishna is residing within her? Simple.
You know, Srila Prabhupada says in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:26-17, he says, actually, the woman must always be protected by her husband. And sometimes there's this misconception, I'm not saying all, but by some devotee men, that protecting the wife means taking it to extremes, where you say you're not allowed to associate with anyone outside of their own family unit. But I think that maybe as Vaishnavi women, we have to ask ourselves, if what you are being asked of makes you uncomfortable, and it's a repetitive feeling of being uncomfortable, then you have to ask yourself, is this not bordering on abuse? And if you're not sure, it's sometimes nice to talk about it with somebody else.
And that's an important one, because eventually the term that we use is gaslighting, right? So gaslighting is very subtle, that you start questioning yourself, am I imagining this? You know, has it been told to me? But did he mean well, as you're saying? But that sense of doubt, when you are repeatedly doubting yourself, and then especially if you are dependent financially, that's another big one. If you are dependent financially on your spouse or partner, and he starts withholding finances because you haven't followed instructions, and that's a big word that we use. We follow instructions, right? In ISKCON, we are taught to follow instructions from our authorities, and also our spouse. So if you haven't followed the instruction, you don't get any financial support. Or there's a threat, I'm going to take the children away from you. And there's another threat that goes on, if you tell anybody this, nobody's going to believe you. Right? And that's the reality. So you start self-doubting. And when that happens, you put in a little corner. And when you are put in that corner, you feel you isolated from the world. And you lose so much of your own self that you don't want to even talk to your best friend about it. So all of that is forms of abuse.
So if we have devotees amongst us that are feeling trapped,
yes,
how would you encourage them to break that cycle of lack of confidence and of putting themselves down? How do you empower them? What can we do individually? And what can you say to somebody in this audience who is facing that?
So, whether it is you, and I always come back to this, or whether it's somebody that you know, or whether you can help somebody in future, this is knowledge is power. So what do? Number one is, as Karunamai said, if you're feeling uncomfortable in that situation, that means there's something not right regarding it. Speak to somebody. Speak to that trusted person, as we were talking about in terms of the trusted adult when it comes to children. Speak to that trusted somebody in your life. Or approach a mentor within the temple. Maybe there's a god sister, right, that you are close to. Maybe there's somebody in the temple who's warm towards you. Seek help. Don't go through it silently, because often we find ourselves living 5 years on, losing 5 years of our lives, and then thinking, I was 45 when all of this started. I am now 50 and I'm still trapped in the same situation. So don't do that. Speak to somebody who would be able to help you. And then there's the Vaishnavi ministry, there's the temple authorities, and ISKCON, whether we are seated here, as I said as the introduction, that we are living in this material world. So it doesn't mean because we initiated within the parampara, the sampradaya, that we are not going to face any emotional, physical, sexual abuse. We are not free from that. We are all here and we are experiencing Kali Yuga. So reach out to the devotee support system, whether it's your Namahata, whether it's a god sister, whether it is your relatives. And we are, as the Vaishnavi ministry, here to support. The mission, actually, of the International Vaishnavi Ministry is to promote a culture of open-heartedness, empowerment for Vaishnavis through association, education, representation, support, and service. So we are here to serve you. We are here to support you. And whatever it may be that maybe you are in self-doubt, the best way is to reach out and talk about it.
Well, thank you for that, Krishangi. Maybe we can ask.
Yeah, thank you, Karuna. We're going to move on. I'm going to move on to, I'll get to the elder abuse, and then we're going to talk just now in a minute to Manjwali, who's going to speak to us about the judicial system in terms of seeking help there. So, Sandra, thank you for joining us, and you are a social activist, and I know that you have been doing a lot of work on the ground. And you said to me earlier that you feel passionately, Karuna spoke about child protection, I spoke about GBV. You wanted to say something about elder abuse.
Hare Krishna, thank you, my sister. Yes, I am a social activist. I'm also a counselor in Richards Bay. I'm from Richards Bay, by the way.
Yes, yes. So thank you for making the time for us this morning.
It's only my pleasure. I'm so overwhelmed by all of this. I love the energy. I just want to say abuse, gender-based violence, and domestic violence is a criminal offense in any category. And any member who is an abuser is not a family anymore, a family member anymore, but a criminal. These are the things that we need to take into account when we want to move forward in change and growth. However, for me, abuse in any category is very close to my heart. But I often noticed recently that our elders are being sidetracked by the system, obviously that is not working, for the betterment of our senior citizens. So I work very closely in Richards Bay with the senior citizens, and I'm often called in the wee hours of the morning to go and rescue a mom or a dad from her drug-abused son or alcoholic son or husband, be it as it may. And for me, my work phone stays on 24/7. So from there now, I have to go call the SAPS, which will take sometimes 3-4 hours to come there. And I just want to say as well, it's sad that our judiciary is actually failing us when it comes to, all of these human rights injustices that we are experiencing right now. Hopefully, as we go along, we will try and change that. But for me, elder abuse comes in many categories as well. It's physical, it's emotional, mental, and financial, So our senior citizens also need to be empowered on how to sort of realize that whatever is making them uncomfortable, obviously, is wrong. It's a wrong mode of action, that is coming to them, and it's invading their human rights, because, I always say this, human rights is elder citizens' rights and vice versa. So they need to go out, or if you are involved in any religious organization, you need to ask people to create awareness around this, so you know what to do in a situation like this. And
Sandra, I just want to cut in there for the simple reason, because I've been, often we see this pictures that just came to mind that when you were speaking, you see it's a image that's often shared with the dad and the child holding hands and walking, but are you going to return the favor when you older? Your father in his younger version spent so much time with you as a growing child, but when you all grown up as an adult, would you spend that time taking care of your senior dad? That's basically, the reality. So what is your view, rather not view, but in terms of like this elder abuse, would you also say that it's just spending time, giving your elder parents time, or whether it is your neighbors or helping them out, going to the shop, helping them buy groceries? I know with the pandemic, it used to be so difficult for the elders to go out and get their stock and come home. So what are those practical things that we can do to support the seniors during their golden years? I mean, they, as a mom now, as Karunakan, I'm sure you could also agree, that now we know what it feels like raising children, right? And so how can we give back?
Thank you. The first thing we need to do is start breaking generational curses. Abuse in any category is a cycle. And so often, you know, being in our culture and tradition, there were things that happened to our foremothers and fathers that was overlooked because at that time it was stigmatized that we cannot speak about certain things. So for me, it would be breaking those generational curses, standing up, speaking up, and making sure that respect is one of the fundamentals when it comes to dealing with our senior citizens.
Oh, and so thank you, Sandra, you know, in terms of speaking up. And what about your time? You know, I feel time that where we are on the go, you know, we have so many, myself personally, to be very honest, there's a list of things in my day that I have to do. But how do we make time, or should it be a priority in terms of giving back our time to those elders, those seniors, whether it's a great-grandmother, whether it's a grandmother, whether it's a parent? What about time?
Very
because
important.
oftentimes, all they want is time.
Very important aspect, actually. You know, we must go back and think of when we were kids and the sacrifices our parents and grandparents made for us. So time is the most expensive currency when we're dealing with our seniors. And you know, you can just give them, you know, they're not into this material world now. They just want time, love, they want loyal people to stand by them. And you know, to be quite honest with you, just taking them out, you know, having lunch with them, shopping with them. There's so much of things that you could do. Just take them for a day at the beach. You know, spend quality time, because it's no use. I often see this, and I also get called to speak at funerals, you know, especially the elderly. And I say this, you you often get this, an elderly person will be living in an abusive house. But when it comes to that person's funeral, the image that I see brings tears to my eyes. So all I'm saying is time is of the essence. So make sure that you give your parents, your grandparents, love and understanding, tolerance, and all of these things, because these things are priceless.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And I think just to add on to that, I was thinking as you're speaking, one of our fundamentals in ISKCON is that we practice Krishna consciousness on a daily basis, right? And we say that our final test is at the moment of death, right? That's our final test where we need to remember Krishna at that point. And Srimad Bhagavatam describes the whole process of how the Yamadutas come and, with the soul and the attachments that we have. But one of the greatest gifts, I think, and I'm sure that many of you, Srila Prabhupada, would also attest, to say that we can assist them in their last days in terms of giving them Krishna consciousness. In terms of even if you are seated here now, and you were saying about generational trauma, maybe the elders in our family were not blessed to have devotee association. But you are here now. You are able to pass on the prasad to them. You are able to give them a book to read, to give them the japa beads, to say, what are you doing in the morning? When you wake up, maybe chant a round of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then inspire them, so eventually to assist them in their twilight years, in their last days. That's the greatest gift that you, as devotees, as a part of our congregation, are able to give them Krishna consciousness, so they will pass their final test. And then in that way, we repay them for all that they've done for us. Thank you, Sandra, for your insight. If you could just pass to Manjwali. Manjwali Devi Dasi is an attorney, and I will just tell you a bit about her before we go on chatting to her. Thank you so much. You've also had a long drive to join us this morning. So she serves on the management committee for ISKCON in Escort. She's a practicing attorney and her focus is on litigation at the High Court and Magistrates Court, and also with a keen interest in family law, exactly the topic that we're speaking about this morning. And she serves as a tutor for legal education and development, lecturing on Magistrates Court's procedure to candidate attorneys. So thank you, Manjwali, for being with us and for sharing your knowledge. You're going to be in terms of the legal or the justice system with family law.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji. This is for this wonderful opportunity, being part of this panel and speaking on this subject. As of the 25th of November, the gender-based violence campaign launched nationally. The whole purpose of this aim of this campaign is to educate you, bring more information to you, and to take you from a point of awareness to accountability.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that, intro where we all should be accountable, Tell me now, we spoke about child protection, about women abuse, about elder abuse, which I thought was a very nice inclusion to our discussion. If you find that you are in a situation where you are abused, right? And I'm going to just use the word I here. So I'm abused and I need to go out and I need to seek help because it's become too much. So what's my steps in terms of the law?
So, Krishangi, our South African legislative framework has a few laws in place that are designed to deal with gender-based violence. Just to name a few, we have the Domestic Violence Amendment Act, we have the Sexual Offences Act, we have the Criminal Related Matters Amendment Act, we've got the Children's Act and the Elder Abuse Act. So these particular acts have procedures in place that are designed to help victims when they encounter a situation of abuse. It also gives us guidelines in terms of identifying different forms of abuse and what steps and procedures a victim can take in order to enforce his or her rights within the judicial framework.
Right. So do I now, practically speaking, the next morning I'm at home and I'm thinking, this is enough. I've dealt with this for so long and I need to go. Do I go to the police station? What do I do?
Krishangi, the first port of call should be the police station to report this incident of violence against you, because that is exactly what it is. It is violence against you. It's infringing on your human dignity. It is an assault on your person. So the first port of call would be to report it to the police station. Remember, our different units in the police station have what we call the family protection and the family violence and children protection services. And that is a unit specifically designed to handle victims who come in with abuse cases, ranging between women and children as well. And if you have difficulties there, in terms of worrying, as we had this discussion, I'm a victim of abuse. How do I go back home and face my abuser for fear of more abuse?
Yeah.
So these police officers were meant to be equipped and trained to handle victims and to also help make provision by reaching out to NGOs that can provide shelter to women who are in need.
So am I right to say then that, because I know fear is a big thing. First of all, I've had to pluck up my courage now. After all this, and it must have been really bad for me to now say, I am heading to the police station. And you go there, and you are met with this, it's not a very nice, warm environment, right? The reality of it. We are living in South Africa. It's not a warm environment. You've got a police officer who's there. Yes, ma'am. Well, how can I help you? And now you've got to emotionally share this trauma that you've been enduring. So you say that there's a specific unit that would, perhaps they would then refer you to say, ex-police constable sergeant is now trained in this. So what happens? Are you taken away to a separate area, something that's more comfortable to speak?
Krishangi, given the sensitivity of such matters and, you know, the emotional trauma that victims encounter or face, yes, ideally, it's something that should not just be met with, you know, publicly sitting in front of people and having this discussion. They do have rooms and facilities where they would take you and have an interview with you as such, to elicit all of that pertinent information from you that would help them to enable to lay a charge against the perpetrator or take the matter forward on your behalf from a criminal perspective.
Right. And that's important, because I feel that as women or even as mothers, to take your child, if your child has been abused, it's traumatic on its own, right? And I know that in my area where I live in, there's Bobby Bear, who does a lot of good work in terms of child protection. But one of the things that come through from them also is that's their safe space, you know, where the child feels safe. So you did also mention that perhaps if the victim of abuse, after reporting it to the South African Police Service, they have a place of safety or a shelter.
Yes, Krishangi, you know, part of the duties of police officers within these units is to actually assist you to the best of their ability and let you know that there are these NPO foundations out there. Like, for example, some of them are like POWA, People Opposing Women Abuse.
Okay.
They've got the Tears Foundation. We also have a gender-based violence command center, which is a telephonic line which you can call and reach out to, explaining to them that this is your position, you're a victim of abuse. They are also equipped to advise you and help you find a shelter for yourself if in fact you are in needing of that and cannot afford to find alternative accommodation for yourself. But that is also just one aspect and one component of it. We also have the magistrates' court, where we have the domestic violence section.
Right.
That domestic violence section is also equipped and trained with clerks to assist you when you are needing to make application for a domestic violence order. You would approach the domestic violence court that's nearest to where you live or reside, and you can approach their offices, and the clerks out there will help you to fill out this application, you know, to ask the court for that particular protection that you need. If you don't mind, I'd just like to elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure, absolutely. Because as you said, it's not only education, it's accountability. So every single one of us here should be able to help somebody else, whether it's today or whether it's in future. And this is so an important part, is how do we get help?
So, dear devotees, you know, this is a responsibility that vests with each and every single one of us. You know, as our panelist members did have in discussion earlier, saying that it could be, you know, our parents, it could be a mother, it could be a sister, it could be a child. You know, there's varying degrees of individuals that are affected by it. But we have to take that ultimate decision to say that we need to stop the cycle of violence, and we need to take those steps, albeit we know it's not going to be an easy approach, it's going to be met with some challenges. But if we take that step, we can be rest assured that we will be given some form of protection from the perpetrators or from the abusers. So you would approach a domestic violence court. There is an application form where you would fill out particulars, you know, personal particulars like your name and your address, and the same of your perpetrator. But more importantly than that, the application form makes provision for including particularity about the incidents of abuse that occurs. So this is where the onus rests on us as victims of abuse. We need to set out that information, you know, with detail, stipulating perhaps a date when this happened, a time, where did it occur, information like how were you assaulted, was it physical abuse, did the abuser slap you, or did he try to throttle you, did he use a weapon against you? If it's verbal abuse, you need to be specific and say, did the abuser use vulgarities against you? What words did he use? All of that, so it helps place the entire matter into context, because you must remember, the presiding officers that are adjudicating on these matters, they don't know you and I, and they don't know what our personal circumstances are. They don't know what our socio-economic circumstances are. So therefore, it's incumbent upon us to put all of that information with detail, and that will be able to give them the authority to say, I have read this application, this is the incidence of abuse that have been identified, and this particular victim is in need of protection, and we can then make these orders to say, this is what the abuser must be refrained from doing.
So thank you for that detail, Manjwali. So to be clear there is to remember everything, right? Because you're going to give as much detailed information as you can so that you could get proper protection. So where it happened, when it happened, how it happened, what happened, all those W's, right? And then say, so that when the order is then granted, it says, well, you shall not do X, Y, Z, A, B, C.
That's correct, Krishangi. In addition to that, to help your case is that if you have experienced any physical injuries or physical trauma, go to a doctor, get a checkup done, get a medical examination done, and have what we call in legal terms a J88 medical report completed. That will also serve to help show the court that these were the injuries sustained by you on that day, because as our panelists said, sometimes those scars heal, and you no longer have any proof of that. So at least go for a medical checkup and have that recorded, and your doctor will serve as that medical expert to confirm to the court that yes, this is what happened to the victim on that day.
And in terms of ISKCON's stance now, what is our stance on child protection, GBV, and the Justice Ministry? Because you are representing ISKCON's Justice Ministry. Now, say ISKCON has a Justice Ministry? What?
Yes, we do.
So what's the stance there on all of this?
Krishangi, as you mentioned earlier as well, is that Srila Prabhupada was very vocal about aspects relating to violence against women and children. And yes, I have read some of his very strong statements. There was no tolerance from Srila Prabhupada when it came to women violence and children violence. If anything, he advocated for the protection of women and children. ISKCON also has ISKCON law in place. There are certain provisions within the ISKCON law that guides us in terms of abuse cases, what steps need to be taken, etc. It also makes provision, as was discussed by our panel, for each center to have a nominated representative for the devotee community to reach out to in the event of them needing help when there's an abuse case. And we also have, the CPO office, we have the Vaishnavi ministry, we also have the Justice Ministry. These subcomponents within ISKCON are available and are at our disposal for the, devotee community. Reach out to one of these components, where you feel that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. And from there, these particular representatives would be able to reach out to try to obtain help for you within the confines of our legislative system.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for summing that up so nicely, Manjwali, because remember that our South African law is the umbrella law that we are confined to. But of course, the ISKCON law would be completely on track with everything that our constitution has to say. So we are here, there's the different, the Vaishnavi Ministry, the Child Protection Office, the Justice Ministry of ISKCON. Do not feel that because you are a woman, you're a child, or as we said, it's a collective responsibility for the men that are seated here also. Collectively, we have that responsibility. It's a matter of being educated, and it's also a matter of acting to say that we're going to have that voice to protect our mothers, our sisters, our children. And let me tell you, when it comes to child protection, girls and boys are equally subjected to abuse. So if you're a man seated here and you've been through your life up until this age without being abused, it could be your son, it could be a nephew, it could be the next generation. And as Sandra has said, it could be the elder that's also going to face this. So that accountability from each and every one of us is so important. Srila Prabhupada has repeatedly mentioned that his disciples, his female disciples, they are my daughters, they are my warriors. He's used those terms where he said that they need protection. So there was no bloodlines. He also gave them the empowerment to take on responsible services. He gave them the scope to go out and do book distribution, to be his warriors. So we need to follow in those footsteps. Karunamai, I know you have some quotes from Srila Prabhupada that you would like to share before we close.
So I just thought it would be nice to share Srila Prabhupada's quotes on basically child protection. So Srila Prabhupada, as Krishangi has mentioned, Srila Prabhupada was vocal about the protection of women and children. And there was a letter and anecdotes by Siddhanta Das, right, where he says, on many occasions, now this is quoting his words, Srila Prabhupada indicated that these children were special. By Srila Prabhupada's request, they had been brought from higher dimensions to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission. So that's powerful. By Srila Prabhupada's request, our Vaishnavi children have been brought from the higher planets to spread this mission. And therefore, one of the important things that we can do for our children, Shri Shri Radharanath ki jai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. One of the important things that we can do for them is to show Shri Prabhupada, as he has cared for our Vaishnavi children, we have to similarly continue that level of care. In another letter, Srila Prabhupada said in 1972, July, he said that these children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. They are not ordinary children. They are Vaikuntha children. And we are very fortunate we can give them a chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness. That is a very great responsibility. Do not neglect it or be confused. Your duty is very clear. So, in many other quotes as well, Srila Prabhupada also made reference to the care of the different members of the society, where he mentioned that in the early days, the elders took care of us, and now it's our responsibility to take care of the elders later. But he goes on to say that the elders, so yes, we know that a woman should be in the care of the husband, but for those women who are unmarried, Srila Prabhupada makes reference to the elders. So who are the elders? Is it somebody over 60 or 70 with grey hair? I have grey hair and I haven't reached that age yet. But basically Srila Prabhupada is referring to this Varnashram system, where each one of us has a collective responsibility to protect and give shelter to the other ashrams in our own capacity. He's created this culture of care single-handedly, and now by Srila Prabhupada giving us all his disciples, grand disciples, and giving us this home which we all call ISKCON, we all have the responsibility to share that culture of care with one another. It's impossible for either one of us to do it individually, but together we will be able to succeed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karunamai. And just on that note, before we conclude, you were mentioning Varnashram system. In a conversation before Srila Prabhupada was in Mumbai, and he was taking ill at that point, and devotees were preparing for him to leave to Vrindavan. And he was in a conversation with his disciples, and Tamal Krishna Goswami had recorded this. He says, but my work is not complete. And the disciples had asked him, but what is it? Is the books have Srimad Bhagavatam? Or what is it that is incomplete? And Srila Prabhupada said, I have not pushed hard enough with the Varnashram system. So that was very, very important to him, understanding that we support each other. We don't work in isolation to say, there's the brahmacharis are on this side, the grihasthas are on this side, the sannyasis are there. We are all under the umbrella of ISKCON. And ultimately, we all try our best to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And that mutual respect for each other, and collectively, we will be able to make a difference. So I'd once again like to thank Manjwali Dasi coming all the way to be with us and sharing your knowledge on the justice system. Sandra Naika, thank you, from Richards Bay as a social activist. And Karunamai Devi Dasi also sharing her knowledge, her professional knowledge, her spiritual knowledge with us. And we've got, would like Vaishnava Priya to raise her hand. Hare Krishna to her, and Prema Bhakti Ras also, I've seen you come in. They're also members of the Vaishnavi ministry. They serve here at the Sri Sri Radha Radhanath temple. So please, there are support systems for you. If you need to talk, if you need to reach out, please do contact whoever you feel closely or comfortable to talk to. Thank you so much. And on that note, we will now observe the Aarti. Any questions? Sorry, Karuna has just reminded me. We just want to take 1 minute. Are there any questions, comments, or perhaps we will still be here? You could chat to us thereafter. And also, there's a Zoom class that Karunamai, if you want to know the details, she will be here. There's a Zoom class on Thursday evening regarding child protection. So she will be able to share those details privately if you are interested for that Zoom.
So yes, so this morning we had a child protection class for children aged 8 and above. So on Thursday, there's the younger kids child abuse and child protection class. The Zoom link I'll share with Alanath Prabhu, and then we can share with the congregation.
Okay.
There's hands up.
Oh, there is a hand up. Okay. Okay, the mic is coming to you, Mataji. I know why. You're a teacher.
Hare Krishna to all of you, to the panel, to our wonderful chairperson who's so, I forget the word that I have to use.
Hare Krishna.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody here benefited from your wonderful spiritual talk, I would say, in between. And you are so true. We should all help collectively. And we cannot just help if we don't have the spiritual strength. And Prabhupada emphasized his nights. I was just reading last night, he sleep about 2 hours a night, just to print his books for us so that we can read it. And I assure you, everybody else will agree with me. The panel will definitely agree with me that you will slowly build up your spiritual strength, and you won't wait to help. You will become perceptive to see abuse, and you will straight away get in, and you will have the power to do it in a very, very clever way where people will appreciate it. Even the opponent whom you are approaching will approach you. So please read Prabhupada's books, all of you. You don't have to sit and read Srimad Bhagavatam, not Chaitanya Charitamrita. The simple books are the essence of all the bigger books. It's still going to help you. And sincere, you'll get a lot of spiritual strength. You'll be helping your neighbors to start off with, your community, and members in your own family. Thank you very much again to the panel and to our lovely chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. There's no other comments or questions. We will now observe the Arati. Thank you. Hare Krishna.